This episode is powered by PodDecks.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Go Talk podcast. Today on the show, we have a special guest, William Jones. William Jones is an author. He is a teacher at the School Without Walls in Washington, D.C., a graduate of the Tuskegee University, and the founder of the Afrofuturism Network. So we're glad to have him on the show to just talk about some of the things that he's been doing just in his career and during this quarantine. So as always, this episode is powered by PodDecks. PodDecks are the hottest new tool for podcasters looking to have more meaningful conversations or gamify their podcast. Simply shuffle up, ask a question, and let the content roll. Get yours today at PodDecks.com and use code GTP2020 for 10% off your first order. So we're going to go ahead bring Mr. Jones in and get the interview started. Hello, Mr. Jones. How are you? How are you doing?
Doing well, sir. Doing well.
How has this quarantine been for you?
It's been different, and that's an understatement. I've been managing, to make the adjustments and so forth, staying safe, respecting the rules, the mask and the distancing and all that. But yeah, had to give up a few things or put some things on hold, and that's been kind of a challenge, but I'm all right.
Clearly, your haircut has been one of the things that you've put on. I don't think I've seen you with much hair on your head.
Yeah, it's been years since I've had this much hair on my head. I do feel good that I can still grow it though. So that's the one takeaway. Is like, man, I'm still able to grow hair, so I feel good about that. But yeah, I grown a lot of hair.
Well, before we start with the interview, I just want to ask you a few questions from PodDecks,
Sure.
one of our sponsors. Today, I'm going to be using the What the Heck deck. So my first question is: back in high school, what was the strangest thing someone could find in your locker?
Wow. Okay. First of all, my school didn't have lockers.
Oh.
But in my bag, the strangest thing you might find. That's a good question. I don't know. The strangest thing you might find. Let's see. I have no idea what would be the strangest thing someone would find. I don't know. That's a good question. You stumped me on that
one. We'll come back to it maybe at the end of the show.
I like that question.
If you could bring one famous person back from the dead, who would you pick?
Wow, famous? Probably Malcolm X. We could use him right now.
Yeah, we could. Yeah,
yeah.
We could use Malcolm X right now. And my last question, and it's a pretty serious question. Is cereal soup? Why or why not?
Cereal soup?
Yeah, is cereal soup.
What is that?
Is cereal soup? Like cereal. No, you don't think cereal is soup?
No.
No?
I don't even put milk in my cereal. No.
I mean, well, let's think about soup. I mean, soup is like a liquid with stuff in it, and cereal is milk,
Okay, no.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
No, you don't think a hot dog is a sandwich?
I've actually had this debate before. No.
Why isn't a hot dog a sandwich?
Because I would feel really strange walking up to a hot dog vendor and saying, "Let me get a sandwich."
Well, yeah, but it's a type of sandwich, like.
No.
Yeah. No. Hot dog's not a sandwich.
Hot dog.
Right.
Hot dog
Hot dog's
is a
not
hot dog.
Sandwich, and cereal's not soup. Okay. Well, that's fine.
It's a Frank and it's a hot dog.
I got it. So my first question for you, when you were going through the process of applying for colleges, what was the motivation behind applying to HBCU, and what made you decide ultimately on Tuskegee?
HBCU was something that had always been talked about in my family. My sister and I, we were the first to go to college, and it had already been part of the conversation that, when we go, it's going to be an HBCU. And I also knew, in terms of my personality and the type of person that I was and where my head was at, that an HBCU would be the best choice for me. When you talk about today, people will say, I don't know, they use the expression woke, not a favorite, not a fan of that expression at all.
Yeah.
But just to give you an idea, I've always had that conscious mindset. And I knew that an HBCU would be the only place where I could feel comfortable and receive a quality education. Those were only schools I applied to, with one exception, because I was interested in art also. So I applied to one art school that was not an HBCU. But other than that, my entire list was HBCUs. How did I come up on Tuskegee? That's an interesting story. Initially, it was going to be Howard University, but my sister beat me to it, and I was not going to the same school as my sister. We were not going to be the same. I just wasn't going to do that. And a friend of mine actually had gone on a visit to Tuskegee, and he called me, and he said, "Man, you got to see the women down here." So that made up my mind for me. And it was actually one of the best choices, one of the best decisions that I ever made. Once I got down there, got used to the culture shock of being in Alabama, being from Brooklyn, New York, never had really been down south. So it was a little bit of a culture shock, a little bit of a culture shift. But after I got adjusted to that, that was one of the best decisions I'd ever made.
So you've been teaching for quite some time, and I know we've talked about this before. You
Yes.
started off teaching in New York before you came down here.
Yes.
What was the motivation behind getting into teaching, and then what's piqued your interest in teaching history specifically?
For teaching, that was something that I always felt like I could do. And I always, when I went through my high school experience, there were some great things that happened for me in the classroom as a student, and there were some not so great things. And I always felt like the not so great things, if I had the opportunity, I would make sure that that wouldn't happen to anyone else. My not so great things, just talking about some of the attitudes uh, that I came across, especially on issues of race. That was probably the biggest thing that I noticed when dealing with certain teachers and certain experiences. And also, in some cases, the quality of the education, the things that I was learning. When I knew better and so forth, I said, if I get the opportunity, I'm going to teach what needs to be taught. I'm going to teach what I want to teach. And as far as history, once again, this is something that was part of my childhood. History was the conversation at the dining room table. History was literally my bedtime stories. So I'd already had an interest in history. History saved my college career. I had actually entered. I told you about this before. I actually entered as a different major, and had gotten frustrated because I just wasn't having the success that I felt that I should be having. And I was actually going to leave. I was actually going to drop out of college. Well, I actually did drop out of college until my mom found out. And then once she found out, I immediately re-entered college. I didn't even get home. She was like, "Well, you can drop out. You're just gonna pay me back all the money that you owe me." And she was like, "Well, either do that or find out something that you like doing." And I had my brother, great roommate, we're still friends to this day. We talked about it, and he said, "Well, man, you always reading them history books, dude. Like, even when we study in chemistry, you over in the corner reading history. Is that what you like?" We had this long conversation. I was like, "Yeah, that's my thing, but what am I gonna do with it?" That was always the question. And what I came to realize is it's not about thinking about, a career or whatever. For me, my advice to anyone going into college is choose what you love to do. Choose the thing that you're doing when no one asks you to do it. And for me, it was history. And then once I had finished and got my degrees in history, I started out as a substitute teacher because I was in between undergrad and graduate school. While I was waiting for grad, I took on a job as a sub just until the semester started, and I fell in love with it. And it also gave me a little more freedom than I think a lot of careers would to kind of do what I wanted to do. more so than other careers. And I just loved being with young people and being able to teach them. And like I said, as best I could, be part of that growth experience for them in a positive way.
So you, like I said before, you started your teaching up in New York,
Mm-hmm.
before you came here to teach. You were a teacher at a New York school at the time of 9/11. What was that day like for you as a
Yes.
it's like experience that?
Wow, that was crazy because I had just started at this school and the school was on the next block. Like it was across the street from the towers. It was so close that was our spot to go to when we had fire drills.
Right.
So that gives you an idea how close it was. And so this is September, so we'd only been in school for a week or so, give or
Right.
take. And what happened was, I remember the day, I was that day, thankfully, I had made the decision not to go out on my break, because oftentimes folks that don't know, the basement levels, the lower levels of the Twin Towers, they had shopping, they had restaurants, they had all these different things you could just kind of go and hang out. And many times on my break, I would just go down there, whatever, hang out, check out the shops. But on that day, thankfully, I did not. And I was just working on some stuff. And then, I remember a teacher come running into the room and said, there was a gas explosion at the towers. That was his first thought, because you just heard the rumblings, you heard the noise. And later on, shortly after, we all, an announcement came over that we had to go into the hallway for a shelter drill. And one of the students had informed me that, plane had hit the building. So once again, being a history teacher, I immediately thought about years ago when a plane had hit the Empire State Building. So I was like, oh man, that's, a heck of an accident.
Right.
And then when the second one hit, that actually shook the building and the lights dimmed for a moment. And that's when we knew something serious was happening. So thankfully on that day, as traumatic as it was, no students were injured. We didn't lose any faculty and so forth. It took a while for us to go back to the school building. We actually going to school at night. We had to share another school. Another school allowed us to come in, and we took classes there at night. I think we were getting out as late as like 7 o'clock at night, because we were coming in, after school hours. But the students endured, faculty endured, and yeah, we made it happen.
So you, like I said, you've been teaching for a long time. What are some of the things that you enjoy most about teaching? What are some of
Right.
the things that you would rather not do?
Vast majority of my teaching experience has been great. Vast majority of it. Working with young people, that's why I got into it. I love working with young people. That's been my greatest experience, just watching young people grow, mature, learn something new. You see them, those eyes light up,
Yeah.
figuratively speaking. It's like that aha moment where they finally figure something out. um, the appreciation that I've received over the years from students and so forth, whether it be just comments, cards, or whatever the case might be, that's always left me with a sense of fulfillment that I don't know that could have gotten anywhere else. Even many of the parents, have been very supportive and encouraging in terms of letting me know that I must be doing something right.
Yeah.
On the negative side, I don't want to get too much into it, but I just will say I enjoyed the experience with the students. Sometimes when you take certain positions and you carry yourself in a certain way, um, it can be problematic for other people, and it's really their issue, not yours. When you are not quiet, when you are not silent, when you speak up, when you feel like there's injustice or there is something that is going on that is not just, and you are vocal about it, you run the risk
Yeah.
of, I don't know if retribution is a very strong word in describing it, but certainly you're going to experience certain things. And I don't mind it. I know that's part of the deal, but that has been something that I've dealt with on more than one occasion, and that's just who I am. But that would be it. But like I said, overall, because this is the only professional job that I've ever done. You know, a lot of times people think teaching is something, you know, your real job didn't work out, so you decided to become a teacher,
Right.
or you're a teacher while you're waiting for your real career to get started. And no, for me, that was it. That was the goal. That's what I wanted to do, and that's what I've done for many years now.
So you, when I was at Walls, you taught U.S. history,
Yes.
and you focused a lot on the African American aspect of it. What do you, the contribution of African Americans to the history of America? Like, if there was one word you could use to describe the importance of our community in this country, what word would you use to describe it, and why?
It's not well, one word would be, I would say, can I use a phrase? Can I cheat a little bit?
Sure.
All right, I'm gonna just say this. I'll put it this way, one word. We're the battery. We're the battery that runs this country. If you look at our history, even before we got here, you know, we were the battery for much of the world when it came to culture, when it came to innovation, when it came to anything that advanced society. You're going to find that on the continent of Africa. Once we were brought here against our will, you have Africans in America from our time since our arrival till now. We're the battery that keeps this country going. And the reason why I can say that with such confidence is because when you look at the things that we've contributed, the things that we've built up in this country, literally built, the things that have been taken from us and repackaged, and you know, and we're not given credit for. When you look at today's culture and what's driving the culture today, it's us, and it always has been. And I think that part of the reason why, I don't know if we're going to talk about this, but I just want to make sure that I get this across. Part of the reason why you are studying history is to understand that. And part of the reason why I taught it the way that I taught it, and the way that I continue to teach it the way that I've always wanted to. And I've gone on script. I mean, I guess you figured that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess you figured that out being in the class. But
Yeah.
that wasn't what I was supposed to teach. But I'm not going to, and I never have, I'm not going to not give you what I know you need. That's not going to happen. You know, now, if it's a class where there's a standardized exam or something at the end, in New York, it was the Regents, and in other states, it's the AP exam, then I got to do what I got to do, because I got, you know, my job then is to prepare students for an exam. But other than that, no, I'm not going to just go along with the script. Never have and never will. And in knowing your history and knowing who you are and learning that power, for me, that becomes something that once you understand that, it puts you in a different space. You know, history is about earning your seat at the table. And when you know your history, you know where you belong. You know, you belong at the head of the table. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when you don't know your history, what can happen is I can tell you anything about who you are, where you came from, what you're about. And if you don't know better, you're going to believe me, because you're going to see it, you're going to hear it. It's coming from a teacher, it's coming from your television, it's coming from, you know, the music you listen to. Other folks are telling your story to you. And if you don't know who you are, you end up ingesting it. It becomes a part of you. So, you know, for whatever I could do for, you know, the year that I might have had a student or whatever, that was my role in combating that.
So we've been on dealing with this pandemic for the greater part of this year, since March. At one point we were all locked down, everything was shut down. We spent a lot of time over the summer, protesting and living in a time where really every time you turn on the news, there's another Black man being shot. And that is something that has become just as American as apple pie or 4th of July. As a Black man, as a father, how do you approach that unfortunate reality that we live in a country where you can go outside and there's no guarantee that you are going to make it home because of of that.
Right. Well, first up, let's be clear, and I'm sure anyone that even has the most basic understanding of history, That's been our experience since we've been here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? This is not new to this generation. The technology is different in terms of how we're getting the information, but that has been part of our existence in this country since the beginning. As a child, you know, you grow up hearing these things.
Right.
And people always talk about, you know, that famous talk that we have, you know, as young people, where your parents are telling you, you know, when you get stopped by the police, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
This is how you conduct yourself. So unfortunately, that's part of our reality in this country. As far as dealing with it, I think that education, once again, is part of it in terms of being able to deal with it. Because one of the things that can drive you crazy is, well, why is this happening? And what's interesting with the human mind is when you pose a question, your brain doesn't rest until you get an answer. You know, I tell anybody, for example, like right now, we're having a discussion about music and there's a song you can't remember. You're like, oh man, I can't remember the name of that song. The answer may pop in your head hours later. And I'm sure you've had that experience.
Yeah.
After the conversation is done, you don't move on to something else. Hours later, you remember that song. Because once you pose a question to yourself, you can't rest until you get that answer. And that's where stress comes from, when you can't get the answer and your brain's trying to figure it out. So history is a big part of answering that question. The study of what's going on today is a big part of answering that question. So as far as combating it, the first thing we need to do, or that I've done for myself, and I would recommend to others, is understand why it's happening, understand where it's coming from. So that part of the question is dealt with already. Once you understand why it's happening, where it's coming from, then the next stage is, how do you combat it? How do you confront it? What do you do? What's the plan moving forward? And that's what I really want to see more of outside of just the protest. And we've had these conversations before, because there was a ton of protests while you were at Walls.
Right.
And the discussion I always wanted to have with you and other young people is, okay, what are you doing before you protest? And what's the plan afterwards? Because if it's just a protest, then that's all it is. Because we've been protesting, once again, for as long as we've been here. See, one of the things in studying history, you learn that this stuff is not new.
Right.
I've seen too many signs and so many young people making these comments about, you know, this generation is different. And, you know, we got those hands. I've actually seen that on posters, like, we got these hands. Like, we've been had hands. Like, we've been fighting. You know what I'm saying? Like, this idea that somehow or another, the response that you saw in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder and these other ones, like that, like y'all doing something different, that's not true. It's just not true. And if we study history, we'll see that that's not true. You know, I can remember reading about sit-ins and what they call lay-ins. Like Frederick Douglass would organize them at churches. You know what I'm saying? That's Frederick Douglass. You know, so this response, or these responses that you're seeing today, they're not new. And part of the reason why, in my opinion, we're not moving forward is because we keep using old strategies. There's nothing new going on today that hasn't happened already. And in studying the history and understanding it, you become a problem solver. See, one of the things about history is, whatever you study the history of, you become an expert in solving the problem of that thing.
Right.
So that's why in teaching young people, especially Black students, if I teach them the history of Europeans, they become experts at European problem solving. But if I teach them the history of African people, okay, now you can become the problem solver of African people. And I think that far too many of us are not the problem solvers of our people, because we're constantly using the same methods and strategies that previous generations have used to varying degrees of success. But it's time that we look at and commit to moving past what's been done already and starting to do something new. I don't even know if I answered your question.
You did.
You already know, like, I tend to go, so you already know that. I like this since you already know me. Like, oh,
Yeah.
here you go again. I'm gonna just sit here.
So when you're looking at shifting the current climate of our country, obviously the election was a little over a month ago.
Mhm.
Joe Biden wins the election. Donald Trump's still trying to figure out a way to
Right.
do whatever it is he can to stay
Right.
in the White
Right.
House. To pretty much no avail at this point. Do you do you see the election of President Biden being a potential change, shifting, even if it's not major change from what we've been used
Right.
to the last 4 years? Do you see anything changing with that, or do you think we get much of the same?
I think we personally, and I don't like saying this, but I think we're going to get much of the same. And the reason why I say that is because uh, one of the things people have to be clear on, folks are talking like whatever you had a problem with during Donald Trump's time in office, understand that's been that's what the country has been like for most of its history.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like people keep wanting to point to Donald Trump's presidency as like this anomaly. Like that's not usually how things are done. Like that's been the history of this country. So his presidency is just a continuation of what my parents experienced, their parents before them experienced. There's nothing new, you know. And I think with Biden's presidency, and I would love to be wrong, but I think with Biden's presidency, I think you might get, how can I put this? Socially acceptable racism. I, like it's gonna be, much of the same. It's just you may because of who's in office and the way that things may be described, or your outlook is shifted a little bit because you had this extreme response with Donald Trump. Now it's a little bit less extreme, and that too can be a little dangerous because you might relax. You're like, man, we got him out of office. You might relax. And that's the thing that I would say to folks, don't relax. If anything, you keep it going, you intensify. Because once again, using history as a guide, you know, we might have relaxed when the Civil War was over, but here
Right.
comes Reconstruction.
Right.
Here comes white redemption in the aftermath of the Civil War, where things started to get worse. We had during Reconstruction, you had the largest number of Black elected officials at any time at one point, on varying in various offices, but you had this massive number of Black men being elected to office, but all heck broke loose. You know what I'm saying? So we can't get so caught up in what we might perceive as a victory that we become complacent, because we're in an ongoing battle in this country and the planet, just an ongoing battle. And when you're in an ongoing battle, you don't have time to relax. You don't have time to celebrate because there's work to be done.
So I do want to shift gears just a little bit. You have
Sure.
your Afrofuturism Network. I
Yes.
just want to talk about that a little bit. What is Afrofuturism? How did you come up with the Afrofuturism Network, and what are some things that you do with the Afrofuturism Network?
Excellent. All right. So Afrofuturism Network, all you folks out there, that is afrofuturismnet.com, where you can find my website. And I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, and all that other good stuff under Afrofuturism Network. What is Afrofuturism? This was a term that was coined in the 90s by a journalist. And basically it was looking at these works that involved African people, and looking at their place in science fiction, their place in fantasy, their place in all of these things that we usually don't associate with Black people. Afrofuturism is this examination and this critique of the works of Black creators in these genres, in these realms, the representation of these people in these genres, in these circles, and also in a very practical sense, it's also looking at where do we go from here. So it's like there's two branches of it, where you're looking at the fantasy, you're looking at the comic books, the movies, the writings, and so forth, the music. That's something else that a lot of people don't realize. A long line of Afrofuturist musicians, one of the earliest was a guy by the name of Sun Ra. If anybody is interested, go look him up. Parliament Funkadelic is part of that line. Today, artists like Janelle Monáe, part of that line. So there's music, there's art, there's all types of things. But in I guess that real world application, there are also some serious conversations about, and I was just part of one about 2 weeks ago. Um, Brother by the name of Yule Anderson put this together, and he worked with the United Nations actually. I was part of a 3-day discussion around the future of Black people. We were examining possible futures for Black folk, in the year 2030 and beyond. So that's the other thing that's part of Afrofuturism is where are we going to be another 50, 60, 70 years? Because once again, we got to plan these things out. We got to have a vision, a strategy, and bringing those things into existence and looking at where we can go. As far as my particular business, before I even knew what the word was, I had been an Afrofuturist all my life. I love science fiction, comic books, you name it, anything with a robot, with a monster, animated, drawn, I was on it. And as a child, I always wondered why I didn't see more of myself in those things, in those forms of entertainment. And I'd always raise those questions. And I remember as a young artist, I would make sure that when I drew pictures of heroes and so forth, and this was, my father had brought this to my attention as a young person, like, you're a superhero too, kind of a thing. So I always made it a point that would be part of what I would do as an artist. So what happens is a little bit later on, in my life, when I started to research, I had done some research on Black films in science fiction, fantasy, and so forth. And I had submitted a paper to this conference in Europe, in Croatia, and I presented the paper in Croatia. And based on the response that I got from other scholars that were in attendance, it was called The Future of Whiteness or something like that. And I had presented this piece on the representation of Black people in science fiction and fantasy film. And based on the response that I got from them, I'd already had the idea to do it, but a friend of mine was in attendance. He was like, man, you got to do this. So I began to put it together, and I came up with the Afrofuturism Network, where I am showcasing artists that are in these realms. And I have also written a book on the subject of Black superheroes and their representation, the ex-con, Voodoo Priest Goddess, and the African King. You can find that on my website. You can also find that on Amazon, and a few local and independent bookstores have been selling them as well. Shout out to Sankofa Books here in DC, Amalgam Coffee House and Comics out in Philadelphia, Walls of Books, which was also in DC, and even Barnes and Noble. They would have me come out and do book signings and so forth. So I've gotten a lot of support when I wrote the book. And another thing that I've done with the company is we held a comic convention, once again highlighting Black artists, independent companies, and so forth in Virginia. And I'm now working with Mr. Chad Eric Smith from Mr. Duke Productions, and we are putting on G.O.A.T next September. Once again, you can go to griotcon.com to get more information on that. We're supposed to have it this past September, but things being what they are, we were not able to have it. But we did have a virtual conversation, a virtual con, where we had a lot of creators and so forth come out, and you guys can see that on YouTube on the G.O.A.T channel, and also on Facebook on the G.O.A.T Facebook page. So once again, what I'm looking to do with the company is continue to find ways to bring attention to Black creators, Black companies that are in the realm of science fiction, fantasy, and so forth. And also, like I said, in a very real sense, I've been part of a lot of conversations, just looking at and strategizing and discussing what a Black future looks like. What does an African future look like, 30, 40, 50 years from now?
So, I mean, for as long as I've known you, you've been like one of the biggest comic book nerds I've known. And you you have your background is one of the posters from Black Panther.
Yes.
Let's talk about Chadwick Boseman, who passed a
Right.
month or so ago. When you look at his effect on the Black community in terms of, you know, seeing that representation in Marvel and seeing like that first Black superhero, and then also just all the iconic films he's done. I mean,
Right.
Jackie Robinson, Thurgood Marshall, like guys like that. What do you, when you look at Black Panther specifically, as a guy, as a Black man, looking for that representation, but also someone that's like a really big comic book nerd, what was the effect of that on you personally?
Wow. I remember just being so excited when the film was first announced that they were going to do it, and then it was like, all right, Marvel, you better do a good job with this one. And I remember when they announced Chadwick Boseman as being the Black Panther, I knew who he was, but I really couldn't see him doing. I got to be honest with you. It was like, because you have when you picture, superhero, you picture Black Panther, you're picturing big muscular dudes and so forth. So I remember thinking, okay, we'll see what happens. Marvel has knocked it out the park previously with some casting decisions that people might have had, problems with. Like I remember when Robert Downey Jr. was announced being Iron Man, a lot of folks were like, I don't know about that one. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna trust him. I'm gonna see what happens. And I remember when I saw Civil War, Captain America, Civil War. As soon as Boseman came on the screen, I was like, oh, he nailed it. Like as soon as this dude walks on screen, he's the Black. I was like, that's the guy. They were right. I'm so happy to be wrong in this. And when the Black Panther film came out, I have never seen a movie have that kind of effect on Black folks in the United States. Never. There have been movies about historic figures. There have been movies about incidents. I have never seen a theatrical film have that type of effect on Black people. You've gone to the theater. I'm sure everybody watching it, they went to the theater. You had Black folk dressing up.
Yeah.
To go to a movie.
Yeah.
And I'm talking not just dressed like the Black Panther. I mean, they were wearing like traditional African garb to go see this movie about a fictional hero from a fictional kingdom. So I mean, to have that kind of effect, I just hadn't seen it ever before. So in terms of the masses, it was really encouraging. It was really good to see that. I would like to see that in other areas. I would like to see that kind of excitement for other projects, but to see it for that was really exciting. For me, just being a huge fan of the hero to begin with, it's one of my earliest heroes from being a child. Because, like, once again, you're looking as a child for yourself in these things that you enjoy. So I'm looking for myself in these comic books, and I latched on to the Black Panther. I latched on to Luke Cage simply because of what they look like. And to see him finally come to the big screen was just tremendous for me. And then on top of that, being a very good film that provoked a lot of conversation in terms of the content of the movie, and it was just tremendous. And once again, Chadwick Boseman did an amazing job in pulling it off. And I just hope that even with his passing, that they continue, that they get another actor to play the role. I know there's some debates to whether or not someone else should play it, certainly, because the character is bigger than anyone actor. I mean, how many Batmans have we seen? How many Supermans have we seen? So certainly, I think that they should continue with his story. And of course, everyone is giving Chadwick Boseman his respect. We know what happened, so it's not like we're not giving him his props. I mean, you look on social media to this day, that's all you see. Matter of fact, Disney changed the introduction to the Black Panther. If you go on Disney, if you go on Disney now and watch it, it's a tribute to him. Comic books have been released, Chadwick Boseman memorials within their pages. So he's getting his recognition, but I want to see the character continue because I want to see what happens with that storyline.
And my last question before we go, and this is kind of an off-topic conversation. Are you? I would have to imagine yes, but are you the biggest nerd in your house? Like, are you the?
Oh, no question, no question. I don't know, maybe on the block. I don't know. Yeah, I'll have to go pretty far. And it's kind of weird, man, because you know, you bring up a little question, like, oh man, I love that anime or something, and I'm just ready to talk about it. I'm ready to keep going for hours. You know what I'm saying? So I always got to reel it back when I'm around certain people because they ain't want all that information. Like, oh man, what did you think of the Mandalorian? Oh man, well let me tell you because I saw so and so in it, and this is what it means, and so I always got to reel in my excitement. So the other good thing about what I do, in terms of my business, is it gets me in those circles with other people that are as passionate. So you're not just kind of the only guy just rambling on and on about, these things. But yeah, I passed on a little nerddom to the next generation in my house, but that's not even close.
Well, I do want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on and talk to me.
Well, let me just say this. I'm sorry to cut you off. I just want to say to you that I appreciate you reaching out to me. I don't take this lightly. I told you this before. I really feel honored that you even thought of me to have me be a part of this experience, be a part of this show. So I thank you for inviting me as well.
Absolutely. I know that the first time we tried to do this, it didn't work out the right way. To no fault of yours. Just a slight.
I'm gonna say nothing.
Just a slight mishap. But nevertheless, I thank you for working with that and rescheduling, coming on, talking to me about some important things. To my viewers, thank you guys for watching. If you want more information about the Afrofuturism Network, G.O.A.T, any of Mr. Jones's books, I'll be sure to include the links to all those things in the description to this video below. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, click the notification bell so you can always keep up with all the new videos. Again, Mr. Jones, thank you for coming on, spending time with me in the audience. And as I always say, thank you for watching. And you guys enjoy the rest of your lives.
Take care.